how do I properly capture the extent of the value that I'm adding to this plan so that I can make sure that every penny that I'm charging is there being earned by the value that I'm adding to the plan. But there's a lot of service providers, a lot of advisors, record keepers that are doing good work. It's just a matter of communicating it. Because that plan sponsor needs to be able to show documented proof that is happening. And if they're unable to show that, then those fees are deemed unreasonable. Welcome to the Wise Fiduciary Podcast. I am Isaac Wood, one of your hosts from Fiduciary Wise. Whether you're a thought leader, service provider, CEO, or decision maker, this podcast is for you. We break down best practices, the services and solutions available to you. We discuss the latest topics and shake up the industry norms. Join us as we explore, challenge, and navigate the future of fiduciary responsibility together. For this season, we're doing skits. That's right. We are doing skits that illustrate conversations that we at Fiduciary Wise have either had or do have, continuously have, or look forward to having. And then we break down those conversations for you. And hopefully there's some application that we're able to find for you and your lives. Today in our skit, I will be playing the financial advisor. So I will get into financial advisor gear.
And I am Marta Hurst. I will be playing the plan sponsor.
And I'm Kate McBride, and I will be playing Fiduciary Wise.
All right. Every good financial advisor wears a tie with his polo shirt and fedora. That is obviously well known. So as we get into costume, the background for today's skit. So this is a meeting that Fiduciary Wise, Kate, and the financial advisor, me, are having with our mutual client, Marta. And we'll be discussing some conversations that Marta has been hearing from her participants, from the employees in her plan, some questions that she's been getting, specifically around fees. And then we'll have a discussion about what fee reasonableness actually means. So if we are ready, costumed up, lights, camera, action.
Thanks for meeting with us today, Kate. My office has been getting questions from employees about 401k plan fees. I just tell them to call Isaac. But I'm wondering if I'm doing everything I should as a plan fiduciary to make sure our 401k fees are reasonable.
Right. The last time that we reviewed plan fees was, I want to say, like 3 years ago. So with market conditions and provider changes, it's probably about time to do that again.
Good instincts, Isaac. Under ERISA, you have a duty to ensure that plan fees are reasonable, and that means benchmarking them periodically. We actually have this on your upcoming plan committee meeting, but let's talk about it.
So what exactly does benchmarking look like? Is that just comparing our plan to others?
Well, partly, yes, but it's more structured than that. We look at three main things: service provider fees, which are what you pay to the record keeper, the advisor, the third party administrator, and then investment fees, the expense ratios on the plan's investment options. And then we look at service levels. What are you getting for those fees?
And how do we compare that? Some plans are bigger or smaller, so the fees are going to vary, right?
Exactly. That's why we use benchmarking databases that actually adjust for plan size, both in dollar amounts and also the number of participants and the service scope. We might also send out a request for information to a few providers just to see what's out there in the current marketplace.
Okay, so let's say we find our fees are higher than the benchmark. Does that mean we have to switch providers?
Not necessarily. Let's talk about advisor fees, for example. Isaac, tell me a little bit more about the services you provide to the plan.
Well, Marta's company has actually 16 locations across 4 different states. I personally go to 12 of those in person once a year. Those meetings are mandatory for the employees, so we always have a pretty great turnout. For 2 of those, I take someone else from my office with me. because I always have a lot of requests for one-on-one meetings following the group meeting. For four of the smaller locations, we do have virtual meetings that we make available, and we've had growing participation since I got added to the plan a couple years ago.
Ah, okay. So Isaac's fee probably isn't going to show up on the low end of the spectrum because he's doing so much with participants. What you're getting for the fee matters. And remember, when we look at plans, we always want to keep the benefit to participants top of mind. So obviously, your plan participants see value in Isaac's visits, and it's helping to grow participation.
Got it. So it's not just about the lowest fee, it's about the value for the cost.
Exactly. And doing this regularly, say every 1 to 3 years, helps demonstrate fiduciary prudence and reduces legal risk.
That all makes sense. And you said you're already working on it.
Yes, we've already got it on our agenda for our next meeting. And Isaac, it would be helpful to outline all of those services you're providing to include with that report.
I'd be happy to. I also keep a log of everyone that I meet with, when we met, and what we discussed. Would that be helpful?
That is terrific. If you have the numbers of how many one-on-ones or phone calls, that would be really helpful for documenting procedural prudence. I'm going to do that again. I'm sorry. That's terrific, Isaac. If you have the numbers of how many one-on-ones or phone calls, that would be helpful for documentation purposes. But the specifics of that you can keep for your records. We'll talk soon to everyone. I look forward to reporting at your next meeting.
And scene. Awesome. Great conversation. Plan sponsor, fiduciary wise. That might be the best financial advisor that's in the marketplace right now. A great conversation. Obviously, when we talk about fees, did you have commentary about the great acting, Marta?
Yes, I had commentary about the script. Obviously, whoever wrote the script wasn't great at math, since the financial advisor talked about fee benchmarking 3 years ago and just got added to the plan 2 years ago. So we should really talk to our script writers.
Inconsistencies.
I don't know that I even noticed that.
Yeah, whoever's
Sorry.
taking the notes on that meeting would maybe catch that.
Yeah.
So that conversation was about fees, but there's two words there. There's the fees, and then there's the reasonableness of
That's right.
the fees. And so I thought that was a great job of pulling out, not only looking at what the fee is, whether it's high or low, but then that third point of what are you getting for the fee is so crucial in this conversation. So why is it that fee reasonableness is even important at all?
You want to take that, Marta?
Well, I mean, I think we're seeing a lot of court cases talking. That's what you see all the time. Fee reasonableness. I mean, pretty much every court case you look up is either about investment returns or and suitable investments, or is about, or lack thereof, or fee reasonableness. I mean, we've seen some very large. There was a large settlement recently, or I guess a large fine issued for a plan that was charging a lot. And it's not about the amount of the fee, because sometimes these service providers, they do charge a lot because there's a lot going on and there's a lot to do. But so that's why, in our skit, most advisors are not like Isaac. There are some out there, 100%. But there are also advisors where there's 16 locations and they're doing everything virtually. There's nothing wrong with that. But obviously going to physical locations is a bigger expense for an advisor than doing a Zoom meeting from their office. And thank goodness we have those kind of capabilities so participants can still get excellent information from no matter where they are in the country. But I think it's important to note that when service providers are doing more and it is impacting the outcomes of your plan participants and the health of your plan, you're not going to get that for bottom dollar.
Right.
Yeah, and you want the services that you need. And if you have more services on a plan that are good services, you're going to end up paying a bit more, but it's not usually going to be exorbitant because you're getting value for what you're paying for. And that's the main thing. And, I would say that Fiduciary Wise benchmarks the investment fees. We benchmark the service provider fees every year. And that makes a difference because when fees look like they're getting, as a plan grows, if you have the service providers using basis points, and most of them do use basis points to, for what they charge, that the plan grows a little bit higher, and then the service providers are getting a little bit more money. And sometimes it gets skewed out of, we look at the benchmarking, it gets skewed out of the green into the orange. And so if that happens, then we're going to look and see, well, should this fee be reduced a little bit, because they're still going to be making a little bit more money, but not as much as they might have as that plan grows, because you don't just leave fees in there forever.
Right.
They ebb and flow, and you have to go by the benchmarking, and that's what we do for plans every year.
Well,
It's an important thing, because fees affect the results that plan participants get over time. And if you have 1% more in fees than you should have in your plan, your over a lifetime of saving, your plan participant can come away with only half of what they would get if the fees were reasonable. So we look at that all the time.
Hey, I'm Isaac Wood with Fiduciary Wise. Did you know that over 92% of fiduciary risk can fall directly on the shoulders of you as the plan sponsor? ERISA's complex regulations make it easy to overlook key responsibilities, leaving you exposed to costly penalties or even legal action. At Fiduciary Wise, we help you mitigate that risk by acting as a named fiduciary, taking on the majority of those responsibilities. From managing investments to ensuring regulatory compliance, we handle the heavy lifting so that you don't have to. Our team is dedicated to protecting you and your employees, reducing your exposure to liability, and giving you peace of mind. When you partner with Fiduciary Wise, you can focus on running your business, knowing that your retirement plan is in safe hands. Let's talk about how we can help shield you from fiduciary risk. You can schedule a meeting today at fiduciarywise.com/scheduling.
I think that's a great point.
That phrase fee reasonableness just sounds so ambiguous, right? Because it kind of is. Like, it doesn't give you a range. It's, is this reasonable, and was there a prudent process that helped determine it? But it's like you wish that ERISA would just give you the numbers, and so you could tell if you're in between the numbers. But that's not how it works. There's a lot of different services and service providers out there that do it to varying degrees. And so they don't tell you what the fee has to be. It just has to be reasonable. And so the importance of then being able to document what the services are that you're receiving for those fees. So how should plan sponsors go about documenting the services that they're receiving? Like, how can they even do that?
I think have to ask a lot of questions of your service providers. I mean, and I feel like sometimes we throw record keepers all in the same bucket, right? Like, you're providing record keeping services, you have a website, you have participant statements. Some of those come out and do education services. Some of them have translation services that participants need in order to get the information to make good decisions about their future and understand what is being offered to them. So I think, and just like we did in our skit, asking the financial advisor, there are TPAs who provide additional 316 services. Maybe they are approving loans and distributions for you. Maybe they are, I don't know, I'm losing all my examples, but there are additional layers of service. And I guarantee you, if you ask your service providers, they want to be able to share those things with you, because that is how they justify their fee. Now, there are also service providers out there that are super, super inexpensive. And I'm not saying that is bad either. But I think, sometimes we look at our benchmark and we do that for our plans. And sometimes there's blue, green, yellow, starts getting up there on the upper end of the fees. And then sometimes plan sponsors go, oh, we're in the yellow. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. It just means we need to dive a little deeper into why is that and what services are being provided for that. If the answer is, I haven't seen my advisor in 3 years, that's when we say, oh, well, let's
that's not a good answer.
That's not reasonable then.
Yeah,
if you never see your advisor,
what are they hiding from?
them getting money is not reasonable. So those are the kind of conversations we have. I remember a few years ago, I feel like I always have horror stories, but we did a fee benchmark, and we never on a phone call just say, hey, Isaac, you're taking more money than usual for this plan. So I called the advisor ahead of time and said, hey, we're going to review this fee benchmark, and your fee isn't, real far outside, but I just want you to know that this is where it lands. And you might want to be prepared to talk about the services that you are providing. And I said, when's the last time you met with the participants? And he's like, oh, well, I meet with them. I go out at least once a year. And I'm like, okay, once a year. So I said, oh, do they have multiple locations? No. Okay. There were like, I don't know, 12, 20 people on the plan. And then I get on our upcoming meeting, our client call committee, everybody's invited. He doesn't show up. The plan sponsor tells me he didn't go see the participants this past year. He hasn't been out. And she's like, yeah, he used to. And then he just kind of quit coming. Okay, well, these are our problems to
Then you should quit
uncover.
getting paid.
And then you quit getting paid. So,
Yeah.
But I think the way we do it, we keep everything above board and have a lot of conversations. But I think if you're sponsoring a plan, you got to ask your service providers, what am I paying you for? And so that you can document that.
Mhm. Right.
And
And
part
that's
of
an
the
easier thing
challenge,
for us to do than for the plan sponsor to do, frankly, because the plan sponsor sometimes gets attached to the service providers and then they don't want to have that uncomfortable conversation. And when we have a conversation like that, it's really not that uncomfortable. I mean, we're not trying to bring the hammer down. We're just asking, okay, we're looking at this. Looks a little bit high. What, are you doing something special for that? What is it that you're doing? And are you seeing, more participants in more different places, or are you, same thing with all of the service providers. If we see the fees are above the benchmark, then we want to just make sure that, if it's time to reduce fees, then we talk about that. And because that's what plans are supposed to do. This is what's supposed to happen. But it's a lot harder for a plan sponsor to have that conversation than it is for us.
it's a lot harder for them to have the conversation because often they have those relationships, but also like they don't know what the answer should be.
Yeah.
Yes.
How often, like so often we're talking to plan sponsors and we'll be like, hey, what is this service provider doing? And they're like, I don't know. But if they would ask the question and that service provider, if a TPA or a record keeper or a financial advisor or an investment manager tells them what they're doing, they're like, well, is that good? Is that bad? Is that more or less than they should be doing? Like the plan sponsors are not experts in this space. And so the challenging part of this is that ERISA expects you to be documenting the services and expects those fees to be reasonable. If you aren't aware of the marketplace enough to know whether they're reasonable, then you need help. And the good news is ERISA says, hey, you can do that. Go get help. But we've actually it wouldn't be an episode this season of the Wise Fiduciary Podcast if we don't mention Cunningham versus Cornell, recent case in the Supreme Court, right? That actually just
Yes.
made this even more necessary because that
Yes.
court case said we talk about fee reasonableness, that actually adding a fee to a plan is a prohibited transaction under ERISA. And so that means
That's
you're
right.
not supposed to do that. Now, they give you exemptions that allow you to do that. But those exemptions, you have to now be able to prove that you qualify for one of those exemptions to add the fee. Part of doing that in the service provider world is communicating what is it that this service provider is doing to earn this fee that I'm adding to this plan. And so that's part of
Yes.
that exemption process, is to say, hey, I added the fee for this financial advisor to these participants. They pay this fee now. That's prohibited. So I've got to have an exemption that qualifies me to do that. Part of earning that exemption is being able to communicate this service provider is doing this thing for this fees, and this is why those things that service provider is doing are important to the participants. And so that court case just got ruled on by the Supreme Court of the United States, and they said, yes, that is on the plan sponsor. The burden of proving that is on the plan sponsor. That whenever a participant says, hey, I don't think this was done correctly, that plan sponsor has to then prove, yes, all these fees that are on this plan are reasonable, and here's the proof. So this is a very pertinent topic in today's world because we're about to see, and we're already seeing, the court cases ratchet up. The litigation in the 401k space ratchet up. The number of plans that are getting sued by participants ratchet up. And they're all going to have to be able to prove the reasonableness of the fees for the service providers on their plan. And so as a plan sponsor, are you going through the process to where you know your fees are reasonable?
I think if
Yeah.
I'm wearing
And
my
why do we
plan
harp on
sponsor
fees?
glasses,
Because,
I'm overwhelmed, like it's very like mind blowing. And I
yeah,
imagine like a
yeah,
lot of people who are sponsoring plans don't
yeah,
even, I mean, they're not following these court cases. And it's not like, did they get a
no,
little a new email update like, hey, plan sponsors, this is a pretty big deal. I mean, I know we have put a lot of information out there. So just another note, if you have not seen the information that we have put out there about this case, go look for it. We will put information in our podcast post so that you can find it. Kate did a great interview with Jim Watkins about it, and Isaac and I have a stellar reaction video you can watch as well for some highlights. So make sure that you check those out. But this is important. And if I'm a plan sponsor, I am looking more closely than ever about how do I get out of the middle of this and make sure I don't get myself in trouble.
And if you're a service provider, you should be having those same thoughts. If you're a service provider, how do you help your clients get out of that trouble, right? And so, how do
yeah,
you
because
help
they're in
your
trouble.
clients be able to tell
Yeah,
the story? But then also, like, how, if I'm a service provider, if I'm an advisor or a record keeper or a TPA or an investment manager or any of these other service providers on a 401k plan, how do I properly tell my story of what I'm doing for this plan? How do I properly capture the extent of the value that I'm adding to this plan so that I can make sure that every penny that I'm charging is there being earned by the value that I'm adding to the plan? So there's so many service providers that we give the ones that aren't doing the work a hard time because they deserve it. But there's a lot of service providers, a lot of advisors, record keepers that are doing good work. It's just a
yeah.
matter of communicating it. Because that plan sponsor needs to be able to show documented proof that is happening. And if they're unable to show that, then those fees are deemed unreasonable.
Hi, I'm Kate McBride with Fiduciary Wise. We know that managing retirement plans comes with a lot of responsibility, and having the right knowledge is crucial to making the best decisions for your plan and participants. That's why at Fiduciary Wise, we don't just provide fiduciary services, we're committed to educating those who manage retirement plans through resources like the Fiduciary Wise Brief. Our program delivers expert insights to help you navigate the complexities of ERISA, compliance, and the fiduciary risk management. If you're finding value in what you're hearing in this podcast and want to take your understanding to the next level, let's continue the conversation. Reach out to us at fiduciarywise.com/scheduling and learn how we can support you with the knowledge and tools you need to confidently manage your plans.
Right. And fee reasonableness is really the reason for most of these court cases. The reason
Yep.
that they mostly come together is that plan sponsors are, and these are big plans. They're not doing the things that they need to be doing. And for instance, you'll see a plan sponsor and they have they have poorly performing investment options in the plan, and they are not working with their service providers to look to see how those options compare with other investment options that could be substituted in the plan. You don't have to keep the same plan investments in the plan all the time. In fact, you should not, because if they are out of line, if they are out of benchmark, in other words, if they're expensive in the benchmarks, if they're in the yellow or the red, they need to be investigated. And if there is a reason to keep it in the plan, then you can keep it in the plan, but you have to have investigated it, you have to have documented it, and there has to be a good reason to keep a more expensive investment in a plan. And if you don't have that, then you are in trouble. And this is what most of those plan lawsuits are about: investment options that are too expensive, that haven't been reviewed, that haven't been replaced with less expensive, better performing options. And those options that are less expensive and better performing are out there everywhere. And so it's not like it's hard to find them. But when plans don't do that, then the there are recent cases like the United Healthcare case where these poorly performing, expensive investment options from their investment bankers company were kept in the plan. They weren't changed out. And that means that that's a violation of ERISA because they did not pay attention to those plans for years, like 5 or 6 years. You can't do that in a plan.
It's
But Kate,
unreasonable.
Yeah.
now I would argue that it wasn't that they weren't paying attention. It's that they didn't want to make that change because they had a working relationship in that particular case. So I think it can be both. It can be people who aren't paying attention, which we
Yeah.
have talked about in prior episodes. Sticking your head in the sand is not a defense. It's not like, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to do that. That's not acceptable when you are a fiduciary for a retirement plan. And then you've got people
Right.
who just kind of like turn a blind eye, so to speak. Like, well, I don't feel like dealing with this right now because it gets a little too much politics within a retirement plan. And I know that we see it on our side. Some of these plans, especially as they get larger, there are definitely some politics at play, and that is very dangerous from a plan
Mhm.
fiduciary perspective.
Yeah.
You just get. I'm
I would be
sorry that
surprised if you
that
don't see
some of these.
lawsuits with that.
Yeah, you can't keep. You can't ignore
There has
things.
been
You
a
can't
couple.
ignore what's in your face just because of some other relationships that are at play. And I think that probably happens more than we see in the court cases. And like we've talked about, yes, we're going to see some more court cases, and some of our clients are probably like, well, my plan's never going to be big enough to be sued, which is false. And this isn't a scare tactic, but this is we learn things from these big cases. Even if our clients never get sued, and we
Yeah.
hope they don't, we learn from these cases. And what's being looked at is being looked at all plan sizes. Just because you don't make it to a courtroom doesn't mean that there might not be questions about the same kind of things at some point.
Right. Right. Because, if the investment options in a plan are expensive, considered expensive when you do benchmarking against other like plans and against the indexes, then you are basically allowing your participants in the plan to get less in retirement. That's basically the issue on expenses in plans. And that's basically the issue that most of the plan lawsuits talk about. That's the reason they're suing, because the investment options are expensive and they're not being properly monitored and replaced when necessary, and that means that they will end up with less in their retirement account, and that is not acceptable.
And
you know. And
it's
so,
not just the cost of the investments. That's the one that we see most often. But it's
Mhm.
also the cost of other service providers, financial
Mm.
advisor, record keeper. We've also seen
oh, absolutely,
recently
yep,
fiduciary service providers getting sued for their fees, and not their fees not being reasonable because they weren't doing the work required to get those fees. In fact, they weren't doing much of anything but adding a fee on. And so we see it applied to all different service providers now. And if you're charging a fee on a plan, it has to be reasonable, or just hard stop. And so
yep,
as a plan sponsor, it's being able to communicate that, to document that, and to have the process in place to not only document one time, but then to continuously review and make sure that the fees the participants are paying are reasonable, because this whole plan has to be for the benefit of the participants. Cold, hard stop.
exclusively in the benefit of the plan participants. Everything that's done in a plan, that's the bottom line.
Anything else on the reasonableness of fees from our fine Wise Fiduciary Podcast hosts?
Well, I would say if anybody has questions about it, that we welcome questions and we'd love to answer your questions. So lob them in to Fiduciary Wise, and we'll blab about this more. So
That is for sure. So great point, Kate. Thanks to all of you for tuning in to the Wise Fiduciary Podcast. We would love to hear from you. As Kate mentioned, we'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to answer your questions. So drop us a comment, send us a message, or you can actually schedule a meeting with us at
Yep.
fiduciarywise.com/scheduling. Don't forget to join us next time for more insights, more discussions, and definitely another skit. We look forward to it. We will see you in the next episode.
The Wise Fiduciary Podcast is a production of Fiduciary Wise LLC. where retirement plan expertise meets real-world insights. Hosted by Marta Hurst, Kate McBride, and Isaac Wood, this show is written and produced by the Fiduciary Wise team. Our executive producer is Haley Blank. This episode was written by Marta Hurst. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be construed as legal or investment advice. Always consult a qualified professional regarding your responsibilities as a plan sponsor or a fiduciary. Thanks for listening.